Sometimes the Anglican communion gets accused of not having doctrinal unity. And this is usually an accusation thrown at us from other communions who assume that they do. And I want to show in this video, one, I want to address the idea of, is there truly doctrinal disunity within Anglicanism? And then I want to look at that and compare that with some of the other communions. And this is not to be a gotcha where I'm trying to just go and show like, haha, look at you, you guys have problems too. As much as it is to showcase the fact that wherever we find ourselves, we tend to look at things with rose-colored glasses, right? This is where I am, this is what I believe, and so I want to view things in the best light possible. And yet, a lot of times we don't extend that same courtesy to other communions. We tend to look at the worst, and social media is not a place where we find a lot of positivity, and so that usually just magnifies this polarizing climate that we find ourselves in. And so hopefully this video, if it accomplishes anything, it gives us a little bit of perspective. So number one, Anglicanism, doctrinal disunity. We do not agree on fundamental things. Is this true? I would say to a certain extent, yes, but I would say to another extent, no. The first thing I would like to point out is a lot of times people will point to the liberalized Episcopal Church and the Church of England and some of the things that they have done, and they'll compare that to the conservatives and they'll be like, look, you guys are totally disagreeing. That is not fair. And the reason that's not fair is we as conservative Orthodox Anglicans would not even include those people as genuinely Anglican, right? They're Anglican in name, but in terms of doctrine, in terms of what they believe, what they hold to, they have actually diverted in such a way that we would say they're in apostasy. And I think most Christians, if they're being fair to us and to what we're claiming, and fairly look and read the Book of Common Prayer, read the scriptures, they'll come to the same conclusion, that this isn't just simply two people in the same communion who can't get along and can't agree, but this is actually one side that has truly departed from the faith once for all delivered to the saints. That being said, you have different churchmanships within the Anglican Church that leads to different doctrinal conclusions. You have low churchmen who tend to be evangelical in their theological approach. You kind of have the broad church people, and these are the ones who sometimes tend more towards liberalism, but a lot of times they just have a lot of different churchmanships and different expressions or a blend of different things. And then you have your high churchmen, your Anglo-Catholics. These are the ones who usually have much more ceremonial and ritual involved in their liturgies, as well as a lot more of the theological components that you would find associated with higher church liturgies and masses. Now, some of these disagreements are truly and genuinely disagreements. I disagree with low churchmen when it comes to the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Many of them hold to a Calvinistic view that sees the bread and wine as essentially not having any real change. It's a signification alone, where the bread and wine signify something and they communicate that, but only in a spiritual manner such that there is no oral reception of Christ's body and blood. It's simply and only a feeding on him in our hearts by faith and with thanksgiving. And while my prayer book says that, and I do not deny that that is part of it, that's not all it says, and that's not all that the Anglicans throughout history have said, in my opinion. Now, this is, again, showcasing a real difference in the way Anglicans interpret the 39 Articles, in the way that Anglicans interpret the Book of Homilies, the way that Anglicans interpret the very liturgy itself. And this is a real theological difference. Evangelicals and Anglo-Catholics have real theological difference. And so in this sense, I can agree with those who are critiquing Anglicanism and say there is an actual problem of doctrinal division here. Some of us believe that ordination comes with a real ontological change. Most of the low church evangelicals are going to say, no, we don't think so. Some of us will say bishops are of the essence of the church. Some of the low church evangelicals are going to say, no, I don't think so. These are problems. These are real problems within a communion. And women's ordination is another one that really throws things off, because you do have theologically orthodox people that are disagreeing on this, which I guess puts into question their theological orthodoxy, but it still showcases that there is real doctrinal division that needs to be addressed. That being said, I'm not convinced that it is as bad as people say it is. I think that there are some things that we really need to address and that have to be ironed out. But I think, leading into my next point, if we look objectively at a lot of the other communions that accuse us of doctrinal division, the kinds of things that they are facing are no greater threats than what we as Anglicans are facing and having to deal with today. I'll use Roman Catholicism as an example. I think Eastern Orthodoxy actually has a bit more unity than most of the other communions, though they have a lot of differences that come more through ethnic background and the arguments between the Western Rite and the Byzantine Rite and which is superior and whether or not the Western Rite is even Orthodox. They have their issues, but I'm going to focus for the sake of time on Roman Catholicism. Within Roman Catholicism, you have your average Catholic that attends a Novus Ordo Mass and participates in his parish life. Then you have your Latin Mass attending Catholics. And if you look at the online discourse and you even sit down and talk with these people, as I have, you will see that there is fundamental disagreements between these people, sometimes on an actual theological level. Some people love Vatican II and think it was a great move for the Catholic Church, moving the Catholic Church more into the modern world and more into the future. There are those who really strongly despise Vatican II, and even though they wink, wink, nod, nod, assent to Vatican II's teachings, they stand in opposition to them on a practical, on-the-ground experience. Now, these are not insignificant things in the way that it plays out, right? You'll have some people that love the Pope. You'll have others that think that he may turn out to be an anti-Pope. You have some that believe that the Novus Ordo Mass is licit and good and right, and you'll have others that believe it's illicit and should never have been made and is actually a corruption of the beauty of the Mass. These are not insignificant issues either. And so, to kind of wrap this up and put a bow on it, I think it's overblown to say Anglicans have strong doctrinal disagreements that are incomparable with other communions. And I would also say to that these doctrinal disagreements, which are common to all communions, are a product of sin and a product of human pride. And so the way into the future is not pointing our finger at one another saying, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, your communion looks like this, mine looks like this. But it's actually a path of repentance. If we as Christians truly believe that the path to salvation requires our ongoing repentance from sin, coming before the cross of Christ, crying out to him, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner, then that's where we need to start. And if we can continually do this, bringing ourselves into a greater humility, we will start to look more compassionately upon the issues that are facing each one of these communions. And ultimately, these issues will resolve themselves, and we will come to a much more united church. So let's stop pointing the finger. Let's start praying, repenting, and living the life of a Christian, and let us watch what God will do.